Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'll give you a couple of seconds to get into the room. Hi, Josh, how are you going today?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Louis. Had a couple of hours of sunlight up here in Queensland this morning, so it was a nice change. Overcast again, but
it's been a very wet year, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been unusual.
Everybody, this is a Menti presentation. That means it's interactive along the way. There's a few activities. So on the screen in front of you, you've got two options. You can either get your phone out and scan the QR code and open it on your phone, which is a little bit easier, I think. Or you can open another browser and go to menti.com and type in the code 7372652. So once again, everybody, just jump in and open up get your mobile phone out, scan the QR code so that you can get in and interact. We've got a couple of activities along the way for you today, which I think will be quite good. All right, my name is Louis. I'm one of the founders of Active and Thriving. My background is as a physio in sort of intensive care and rehabilitation, so neurorehabilitation along the way. So very much looking forward to speaking about a topic that I've learned about a lot over the last 15 years. And joining me today is Mr. Josh Marsden, one of the other co-founders.
Hello, everybody.
Excellent. We might get stuck in. What are we talking about today? We're talking about cognitive function and a little bit more specifically around neuroplasticity. We're going to dig into why these things are important. We're going to break down a little bit of the anatomical background and a little bit of the processes that go on in the brain. We'll dig in a little bit about what happens as you age and how your brain changes. And then we'll give you our top tips for keeping a healthy brain. So first activity straight away, we're going to do a memory test. And so this test is actually from MOCA exam, so Montreal Cognitive Assessment. I'm going to give you an order of these 5 words. You're going to need to remember that order and rearrange them in that order. So if you haven't got this open to interact with, please go to menti.com and type in the code, or you can go to the address at the top. So the order that you need to remember, we'll say it twice, is face, velvet, church, daisy, red. Face, velvet, church, daisy, red. I want you to rearrange those again in order I just said. Give you a couple of minutes to get through that.
It's a good one, Louis. It's a good one to sharpen us up before lunchtime, that's for sure.
So I want you, first time's always a little bit easy, but we're going to come back to this later in the presentation and we'll see how everybody does again. All right, we've got predominantly all the right answers, which is great. Church and Daisy seem to be nudging each other a little bit there, Josh. So maybe a few people have got those two the other way around, but predominantly we are on track. So remember those?
I was just going to say, I think people are now scrambling to realize they're going to need to recall this down the track. So
this is a common assessment we use in rehabilitation to be able to understand people's memory, and we'll go through other different parts of brain function, and there's a whole lot of bunch of tests that you can do to test people. Let's see how we go at the end of the presentation. The cognitive function is a broad term that refers to mental processes involved in the acquisition of knowledge, manipulation of information, and reasoning. Cognition has a physical basis in the brain with over 100 billion nerve cells in a healthy human brain. Each of these can have up to 10,000 connections with other nerve cells called neurons. All of this makes it an incredibly complicated organ. In order to begin to understand the brain, we sometimes rely on simplified scientific models, some of which have been developed using studies in rodents and non-human primates. These studies have helped us understand certain parts of our cognition, such as how we learn language, and have also formed the basis for many breakouts in treatments of common disorders, cognition, such as Alzheimer's disease. Cognition fundamentally controls our thoughts and our behaviors. And these are regulated by discrete brain circuits, which are underpinned by a number of neurotransmitter systems. There are a number of brain chemicals which play major roles in regulating cognitive processes, including dopamine, noradrenaline, and serotonin. In order to better understand what drives certain behaviors, it is important to consider cognition and the underlying neurobiology that underpins these behaviors. Our distinct cognitive functions arises because of the processes occurring within certain parts of our brain. Only some of these end up entering our conscious awareness. I'm going to go back to a little anatomy here, Josh. Might have been a little bit of time ago for you to dust this off, but let's tick through some different parts of the brain. So the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. It's divided into two halves, or called hemispheres. These halves contain functional sections called lobes. These sections of the brain lobes are called the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, the parietal lobe, and the occipital lobe. Frontal lobes are the largest, and they're indicated by their name. They're located in the front of the brain. They coordinate high-level behaviors such as motor skills, problem-solving, judgment, planning, and attention. The frontal lobes also manage emotions, personality, and temper. The parietal lobes are located behind the frontal lobes. They're involved in organizing and interpreting sensory information from other parts of the brain. Temporal lobes are house the auditory complex. They're located at either side of on the head, on the same level as the ears. They coordinate specific functions, including hearing, visual memory, such as facial recognition, verbal memory, such as understanding language, and interpreting the emotions and reactions of others. The occipital lobes are located at the back of the brain. They're heavily involved in the ability to read and recognize colors and shapes. The other areas are the cerebellum and the brainstem. The cerebellum is located at the back of the brain, just below the occipital lobes. It's involved in fine motor skills, which refers to the coordination of smaller or fine movements, especially those involving the hands and the feet. The cerebellum also helps to maintain body posture, equilibrium, balance, and more of your automatic functions like heart rate. Brainstem is located at the front of the cerebellum and connects to the brain to the spinal cord. It's responsible for passing messages to various parts of the body and the cerebral cortex. The cognition is not a singular concept, and various cognitive functions are responsible for the regulation of specific behaviors or actions. Cognitive psychology theory has identified cognitive functions, including in the following areas. The first one's attention. Attention is the cognitive or brain function that we use to select between stimuli that reach our brain simultaneous, both external, like smells, sounds, images, and internal, like thoughts and emotions, that are useful for carrying out a mental or motor activity. Next is memory. So memory is a complex process that allows us to code, store, and recover information. Language is a symbolic communication system that is presented through languages. Language isn't only important for communicating with others, but it also helps us to structure our own internal thoughts. Next is visuospatial and motor functions. They help to interpret our environment and move through it. And social cognition emotions is all about self-assessment, sometimes known as metacognition or thinking about thinking. And finally, executive functions are the most complex cognitive functions. While there are different definitions of cognitive functions, most of them include cognition control and thought and behavior control related to various processes. They comprise a set of skills like attention, focus, planning, programming, regulation, and internal behavior verification. A little bit of stuff to get through there, and now we're going to run a little quick quiz. So this is taken from I think, year 9 biology class. We've got 8 questions here, so I want you to put your name in, and we're going to run through them.
Thanks, Louis. We'll give everybody a couple of moments to put their name in. We put the pressure on now, knowing it's a grade 9 syllabus. So let's see how we all fare.
All right, so we're going to start the countdown. You're going to get 4 answers to choose from. The fastest, you get more points going quicker.
It's all about speed. So the first question is, what body system is the brain part of? You should have 4 answers up on your screen, so choose the one that you recall from what Louis went through. So remember, it's all about speed. So each of these questions will pop up. Try and get that answer, the correct answer, as quickly as possible.
Well done.
Great start, everybody. Smashing it. All right, question 2. True or false? We only use 10% of our brains. I mean, this is something that we hear since primary school, isn't it? What about you, Louis? You using more than 10% of your brain today?
Depends on the day, I think.
Yeah, that's it.
Interesting. That's in fact false.
Yeah, so I think that one's probably been ingrained in what people believe for a very long time. All right, on to the next one. Chance to make up that one if you missed the last one. About how many neurons does your brain contain? 10,000, 100 million, 100 billion, or 10 trillion? Good stuff.
Well done.
Yeah, 100 billion. Most of you heard what Louis was chatting about. Halfway mark. The brainstem is located at the base of the brain, connecting to the spinal cord. Which of these functions does the brainstem control? Again, remember, try and do this nice and quickly. So this is the one I flopped on yesterday when we went through the run through, Louis. Good stuff. Majority went for the correct answer, which was heart rate. All right, which of these glands is located within the brain? So again, checking your phone. Adrenal, salivary, pituitary, and thyroid. The names really help with this one, if you think about them.
I think that's a tricky one, that one. Oh, smashed it. Well done.
Not for this group, Louis, not for this group. Okay, true or false? When you have a headache, it's because your brain is hurting. Yep, majority of people correct. That's right. It is false. The brain can't actually doesn't have senses for pain. All right, home straight, everybody. What is the name of the biggest part of your brain? Louis mentioned it right at the start. Make sure you read it carefully between cerebellum and cerebrum. At a quick glance, they might look like the same word. Okay, so I was getting towards the back of the prezzo, so I think that's where our attention might have started to waver. It is the cerebrum.
Yeah, so the cerebrum includes the frontal lobe and the other lobes. Make it up on the last one.
All right, what is the name of the area of the brain that controls memory? So we're going to see who had the fastest fingers in the group. Well done, temporal lobe. All right, let's flick through to the results and see how everybody was. And as Louis mentioned, the points are calculated based on correct answer, but then also speed. Awesome work. So big shout out to Debbie for progressing through the quiz and being the fastest as well. And then a special mention to the top 10 that are listed on the screen as well. Vroom, Puggy, top 3. So hope you enjoyed that, and yeah, just highlights the importance of absorbing the information or how quickly the information, I guess, can be forgotten as it goes in one ear and out the other sometimes.
Well done, Debbie. So what is neuroplasticity? Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to create new neural pathways based on new experiences. It refers to changes in neural pathways and synapses that result from changes in behavior, environmental and neural processes, and changes resulting from bodily injury. Neuroplasticity has replaced the formerly held theory that the brain is a physiologically static organ and explores how the brain changes throughout life. Neuroplasticity occurs on a variety of levels, ranging from minute cellular changes resulting from learning to large-scale cortical remapping responses to injury. The role of neuroplasticity is widely recognized in healthy development, learning, memory, and recovery from brain damage. During most of the 20th century, the consensus among neuroscientists was that the brain structure was relatively immutable after cortical period during early childhood. It is true that the brain is especially plastic during childhood's critical period, with new neuron connections forming constantly. However, recent findings show that many areas of the brain remain plastic even after adulthood. So plastic means that it's malleable and it's adaptable and it's able to change. Plasticity can be demonstrated over the course of virtually any form of learning. To want to remember an experience, the circuitry of your brain must change. Learning takes place when there is either a change in an internal structure of neurons or a heightened number of synapses between neurons. Studies conducted using rats illustrate how the brain changes in response to experience. Rats who lived in more enriched environments had larger neurons, more DNA and more RNA. They had heavier cerebral cortices and larger synapses compared to rats who lived in sparse environments. Stimulation is good for us. A surprising consequence of neuroplasticity is that the brain activity associated with a given function can move to a different location. This can result from normal experience and also occurs in the process of recovery from a brain injury. In fact, neuroplasticity is the basis of goal-directed experiential therapeutic programs in rehabilitation after brain injury. For example, after a person is blinded in one eye, part of the brain associated with processing input from that eye doesn't simply sit idle. It takes on new functions, perhaps processing visual input from the remaining eye or doing something entirely different. This is because while certain parts of the brain have a typical function, the brain can be rewired, all because of plasticity. What does this mean for you? It means that we can all influence our brain development in positive or negative directions. The more we engage and challenge our mind and body, the longer our brains function at a higher level. So how does it work? Neuroplastic changes occur at the chemical, structural, and functional levels of the brain. These changes work in concert with one another. Chemical changes occurs in the initial stages of learning something new. Chemical change primarily influences short-term memory or short-term improvement at a motor skill. Structural changes occur when neurons in the brain change their connections, altering your brain structure. This type of change requires more time and effort. It involves long-term memory and long-term improvement of a motor skill. Functional change occurs when the entire brain networks change. These brain networks, as they are used over and over again, become more excitable and more efficient when activated. How does your brain change as you age? As people age, their bodily systems, including the brain, gradually decline. Slips of the mind are associated with getting older. That said, people often experience the same slight memory lapses in their 20s, but do not give it a second thought. Common memory changes are associated with normal aging, and they include difficulty learning something new. Committing new information to memory can take longer. Multitasking, so you get slowed processing, can occur with planning parallel tasks and makes this more difficult as we age. Recalling names and numbers. So strategic memory, which helps with remembering names and numbers, begins to decline after the age of 20. And remembering appointments. Without cues to recall the information, the brain may put appointments into storage and not access them unless something jogs the person's memory. From an anatomical point of view, general changes that researchers think occur during the brain aging include the overall brain mass, there's shrinkage in the frontal lobe and the hippocampus, which are areas involved in higher cognitive function and encoding new memories. This starts around the age of 60 or 70 years old. Cortical density, this refers to the thinning of the outer ridge surface of the brain due to declining synaptic connections. Fewer connections may contribute to slower cognitive processing. White matter, so white matter consists of myelinated nerve fibers that are bundled into tracts and carry nerve signals between brain cells. Researchers think that myelin shrinks with age, and as a result, processing is slower and cognitive function is reduced. And neurotransmitter systems. So researchers suggest that the brain generates fewer chemical messages with age. And as this decrease in dopamine, acetylcholine, serotonin, and norepinephrine activity may play a role in declining cognition and memory and increasing depression. The top tips for a healthy brain. Researchers have discovered several factors that speed up brain aging. For example, obesity in midlife may accelerate brain aging by around 10 years. And both sugar and diet varieties of soda are associated with poorer brain health. A growing body of evidence suggests that people who experience the least decline in cognition and memory all share certain habits. And they're listed on the screen. So engaging in regular physical activity, pursuing intellectual stimulating activities, staying socially active, managing stress, eating a healthful diet, and sleeping well. So research at the University of Miami in Florida found that individuals over the age of 50 who engaged in little to no exercise experienced a decline in memory and thinking skills compared to 10 years of aging in 5 years, compared to those who took part in moderate or higher intensity exercise. Essentially, physical activity slowed brain aging by about 10 years. A key component of brain health is diet. In 2018, researchers linked omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in the blood to healthy brain aging. Another study has also determined that consuming foods included in the Mediterranean, or the MIND diet, is associated with a lower risk of memory difficulties in older adults. Having close relationships with others you can count on is important for a happy, healthy life, and it also may help you live longer. It's also important for your brain health too, as research suggests its opposite, or loneliness, seems to be a factor in developing Alzheimer's. Sleep is the most important thing you can do to reset the brain, allow it to heal, and to restore mental health. Lack of sleep has been identified as a risk factor for many neurodegenerative diseases. Chronic stress is associated with altered brain plasticity, dysregulation of the immune system, and increased risk of developing brain disorders. Finally, building new skills throughout the lifetime. How to cook Indian food, how to play an instrument, even learning the rules of a new card game or traveling to an unfamiliar city. It all helps keep your brain healthy by constantly creating new connections between brain cells. Challenging your brain essentially creates a backup system. The more intellectual stimulation you have, the more various neural circuits are used. And the more circuits you have, the harder it is for the changes associated with neurodegenerative diseases to manifest. It's more helpful to master real-world skills than it is to play online cognitive enhancement games. For example, researchers found that learning to play a sound on a musical instrument changes the brainwaves in such a way that it improves the individual's listening and hearing skills. The alteration in the brain activity indicates that the brain rewires itself to compensate for disease or injuries that might prevent a person's ability to perform tasks. This study was one of the first to show the direct changes in the brain after only one session. And here we are again. So back to the memory test. I'm not going to tell you the order this time. Let's see how the group goes in turn of rearranging these into the correct order from the activity at the start. Give you a minute to get through it.
I've been listening to this brain training guy, Louis, called Jim Quick. And yeah, he's got lots of little hacks for memory. Memory is one of the things that, as you know, as my colleague, I always struggle with names, faces, places. And yeah, the method is creating basically a story, a journey. You're going into the house, and each of the things that you're remembering has a different place inside that house, or wherever your location might be.
Very good, everybody. So I think we picked up something that we picked up in the first time, Josh, but a little bit more pronounced this time. And it's just changed. So I think half of you have gotten this correct, and I think half of you have gotten this wrong. So the correct order is face, velvet, church, daisy, red. We had church in third and daisy in fourth. A little bit of difficulty with it.
I was just going to say, I'll tell you my very, very raw story. It was my velvet face went into the church to pick a daisy that was red.
All right, well done, everybody. We've got some new articles on Active and Thriving around cognition. There's a couple of new audios in there that go through this content as well. To access it, go into A&T and either search cognition, or you can get the link here. We'll also put this presentation up that you can share with any of your colleagues at work, and we'll be able to share the slides as well. And finally, we've just got a couple of readings if you want to dig into this a little bit more. The first book, The Brain That Helps Itself, really talks around neuroplasticity and how the brain rearranges it. If you want to dig into a bit more of a habit-based approach, Spark is all about exercise and how exercise can really change the way the brain works. And then Eat Complete is looking at it from a diet perspective, 21 nutrients that fuel brain power. Thanks, everybody.
Laura, just quickly confirm for those that are trying to click on the links, it'll be from your Menti app, not the video that's been displayed. So if you've got your Menti app open, you'll be able to open up the Active and Thriving app, or also the content here.
We'll put this webinar up in the library on the app in the next 24 hours. You can also go back and see any of the previous Wellbeing Wednesdays that we've shared. And we look forward to having you in again next month. I think we are either digging into strength training, or we might take a little bit of different spin as well and have something around financial well-being. We're still working that out.
That's right. Yeah, we'll let you know as soon as it's 100% confirmed.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Louis. Thanks, everybody, for your time. Hope you have a great day.